Hello. Not in the car today, but had some advice or opinion that I felt like was worth sharing. Um, as many of you know who watch this channel, my favorite law of attraction, law of assumption, manifesting type of teacher. Again, for me, all those terms are pretty much synonymous. My favorite teacher by far is Emile Coué, who um, talks about these ideas in a much more practical, down to earth, uh, relatively sober, non sensationalistic manner compared to most of the more prominent and famous LOA teachers, especially of today. But even compared to someone like Neville or even Joseph Murphy, uh, Coué is much more down to earth. And he actually intentionally really didn't use any spiritual or religious language in what he was talking about, or virtually no spiritual language. He never used religious language. um, he's great. He just, I think he's definitely taught me more about these concepts and how to apply them, more than any other teacher. And what's interesting for me, and I think probably interesting for a lot of you who are into this channel, is that you might be a pretty spiritual person. I think a lot of people who are attracted to what I talk about on this channel are quite spiritual, as I am. Um, However, a lot of the new thought, more spiritual sounding LOA advice tends to confuse us and alienate us and seems too esoteric, while Coué is like shockingly straightforward in what he's talking about. So, something that I have found very rewarding, um, over the past couple years has been basically like coalescing or integrating what Coué always talks about with very spiritual language, and specifically the teachings of Joel Goldsmith, who we've made many videos and I made several podcast episodes about Goldsmith's teachings the last couple of years. The two main people I've read and pondered and meditated over, when it comes to these LOA teachings the last 2 years, without question, are Coué. It's always Coué, and if not Coué, a direct someone directly associated with Coué, like Charles Baudouin or C. Harry Brooks, who both wrote extensively and brilliantly about Coué's methods. So I've studied and pondered what they were talking about, and the other person, the last couple of years, without question, is Joel Goldsmith, and it's really an interesting combo for me, and I think probably for many of you, if you do something like this as well. It doesn't now, Goldsmith's a very, very, very spiritual sounding, religious sounding LOA teacher, right? I would say just as spiritual and religious sounding as Neville or Joseph Murphy or any of these other LOA teachers who are very spiritual sounding. I would also say that Goldsmith is, for most of you, going to be just as good a teacher as Neville is or Joseph Murphy is. Goldsmith, in my opinion, is without question on that same level as Neville. Yet Neville is, probably 20 times as popular. Goldsmith, kind of touches upon this idea of what you have to suggest to yourself, but he does it in this very religious sounding tone. And it's interesting because he kind of poo-poos hypnosis and stuff like this. But the truth is, I made a couple videos about this already. You can check out the Joel Goldsmith playlist. I'll put a link above to that. The truth is that so much of what Goldsmith talks about, using very spiritual language, beautiful spiritual language, again, just as evocative and eloquent if not more so than Neville a lot of the time. What Goldsmith's talking about really is like what Coué is talking about in terms of suggestion. So I just thought I would read a great passage from Joel Goldsmith's book, Meditation, today, or excuse me, The Art of Meditation is the name of the book. We've read from this book before. Another example of this idea of suggestibility. And like when we use the term God, as Goldsmith likes to use, how in many ways that term is synonymous with our imagination, which is, the connection that Neville made, that, your imagination is God, God is your imagination. And, your imagination is what Coué always talks about, learning to work with your imagination instead of having your imagination work against you. So, Goldsmith starts out this passage by saying, God is the fabric, the substance, the law of your consciousness. Now remember, if you're not comfortable with this religious language, you can replace God with imagination, right? Say imagination is the fabric, the substance, the law of your consciousness. That's basically what Coué does. So remember that. It's important here. God is the fabric, the substance, the law of your consciousness. Evil is but a suggestion or temptation to accept a creator apart from God. So there's this language again. Evil is but a suggestion or temptation to accept a creator apart from God, or we could say apart from your imagination. In other words, to be auto-suggesting something evil as opposed to something productive. So evil is an illusion in that sense that we create through our imagination. Goldsmith goes on to say, this suggestion you must handle within yourself until you come to that place of rest in which the word of God abides in you and you abide in this consciousness of truth. Coué always said, the issue most of us have is that we don't realize that we can, in a way, control and rest in the grace of our imagination. We think we can't, and so we allow our imagination to overwhelm us. It's like, he would say, it's like a wild horse that can kill us, right? So we could domesticate that horse and utilize it. Very similar to what Goldsmith's saying here. Again, this suggestion, auto-suggestion, you must handle within yourself until you come to that place of rest in which the word of God, or your imagination, abides, and you abide in this consciousness of truth. In other words, you abide with the true belief that you have control via your imagination of your life. And I don't mean this in some, all omnipotent way where you're creating everything or whatever, but read Coué, as most of you now watching this video have, and understand what Coué is talking about. He said you're master of yourself, your decisions, your imagination. If you're able to domesticate it and work with it as opposed to against it, if you're able to rest and rely on your imagination, then you will shape your life in a way that's conducive to your desires. So I'm just going to read this a little bit more of this passage. I'll read the first part again. Again, notice the term God being interchangeable with imagination, and see how Goldsmith is using the word suggestion, and obviously Coué was the master talking about autosuggestion, and then using conscious autosuggestion to change your autosuggestions so they become more to your liking. In other words, you have to suggest that God or your imagination abides in you, and that is a power on your behalf until you believe it, right? So I'm going to read the couple paragraphs from Goldsmith here. God is the fabric, the substance, and the law of your consciousness. Evil is but a suggestion or temptation to accept a creator apart from God. This suggestion you must handle within yourself until you come to that place of rest in which the word of God abides in you and you abide in this consciousness of truth. Abide in the truth that God is the only power, and you will discover that all blessings emanate from this truth maintained in your consciousness. Abide in the truth of God's kingdom established on earth. Abide in the truth that I am closer than breathing and nearer than hands and feet. Abide in the truth that your names are writ in heaven, that you are the Christed Son of God, the image and likeness of his divine being, the manifestation of his glory. I am come that they might have life and that they might have it more abundantly. Let your prayer be a resting from words, a resting from thoughts, a resting from desire. Take no anxious thought. The Spirit of truth, the Comforter, will never leave you, even though every avenue or channel of good is closed. The Comforter is an activity of God within your own consciousness. As much as it is, as such, it is as much an integral part of your being as is your own integrity, loyalty, or fidelity. The Comforter is within you. It is the peace, be still, to every storm without and to every disturbance within. Open the door of your consciousness and let the Comforter speak. Let the Comforter be your assurance. Let the Comforter be your supply, your health, the harmony of your home, and the peace of your inner life. Very profound. Goldsmith is great. And for those of you who are finding Neville to be not as helpful as it once was, or you don't connect with Neville as much, but you connect with some aspect of these teachings, perhaps you connect with Coué, Goldsmith's a very interesting alternative or supplement to look at. But these are powerful, powerful words. And really make it clear, in my opinion, that someone as spiritual sounding as Goldsmith is really still basically saying what Coué always said in terms of your imagination being your power and recognizing and resting in that. Hope this was helpful. If you have any questions or would like to work with me, I can be reached over at radicalcounselor.com.